And then the director of photography goes, yeah, we're going to put the horse right here. And I was like, guys, I'm sorry. What? No. You can't put a 3,000-pound horse in this house. Why not? Well, it's a 90-year-old row house and it's vacant. And the joists are not going to be able to hold a horse. And at the time, Idris had just been named Sexiest Man Alive. And I was like, you can't put the Sexiest Man Alive, a 3,000-pound horse, your staff, the director, and all your equipment in this house. You're gonna end up in the basement.
Yep.
I'm looking at the joists and I'm looking for misconnections on the joist systems, and I'm like, well, if we did it, we'd have to cut the slab, pour a rebar footer. We'd have to buy stabilizers or rent them. Really? How much is it gonna cost? I don't know. When do you need to buy it? We need it in 2 weeks. Okay.
So I appreciate your time, definitely. So I'd love to get to know more about you, your history, how you started in real estate.
My history is, my resume is very diverse. Everything from janitor to DJ to failed entrepreneur to owning real estate at a very young age to screwing that up and starting over to a real estate agent, paralegal. My resume is very, very full. My world now encapsulates a lot of those experiences, which is quite interesting. But my start in real estate, I guess, came from my parents to some degree, especially my mom. She dabbled in real estate investment when I was a kid, and she was always an entrepreneur. She's been self-employed for 30 plus years.
Did you grow up in the Philadelphia area?
I did. I'm from the Northeast, as some of my colleagues would like to say, the Neast. I grew up there pretty much my whole childhood, and then moved to this community in West Philadelphia in the King-Sessing Southwest area in 2010. And I kind of started my real estate career shortly thereafter, the career that I have now.
So you moved here and set your roots here?
Yeah, I was a resident before I was a developer.
If you could tell us about your companies and a brief overview of what they are.
Yeah. So Spak Group is our main investment vehicle. We have a multitude of LLCs. Each project is its own LLC. For investment structure purposes, insurance, liability purposes, etc. But the main vehicle for us is Spak Group, and so any ownership or investment we make in any partnership is done through Spak Group. And Spak Group's usually the managing partner, operating the day-to-day, etc. We have Kaps Construction, which is my last name backwards. My wife thought she was making a snide comment, and I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah.
And so Kaps Construction is a licensed GC. It's the employer of most of our team members. And then there's Spak Management, which is basically a vehicle for us to manage all of our properties in-house. And so the integration of those companies together kind of happened by accident. Spak Group didn't exist initially. It was one of the other LLCs that we own, as SI Holdings, which is now like a subsidiary. Spak Group owns SI Holdings now, which is kind of ironic. Yeah. But we started Kaps Construction because on our first project together, Marcia and myself, my mom and I, because I had done 3 by myself, she had done 1 by herself. We did 1 together. Halfway through the job, we got burned by a contractor. Yeah. And we finished the job with our own staff. And we went, that wasn't hard. Let's go get our GC license, which at the time was very difficult to get. Yeah. And the next thing you knew, we had a company, we had employees, we went down a road that we had no experience in construction, and we've learned. And about 5 years after we started that, we built our first new construction project, and instead of starting with like a duplex, we built a 15,000 square foot mixed use building because go big or go home.
Right.
So Kaps Construction has been a great vehicle for us, and gives us the opportunity to control our permits a whole lot more than if we weren't the GC, and manage our subs in a very different way than if we were going through a GC. And then the management company handles all of our marketing, all of our leasing, our management, property management.
How has the community taken to you in development, and how's it been working with the community?
So far, good. I mean, it's community development, and so you're engaging in conversations that aren't easy. There's difficult conversations in which usually developments do not turn out the way that you want them to. This building that we're sitting in was supposed to be 14 units in 1 commercial space. Instead it's 12 and 2, right? And so there's modifications that are made. But on the flip side, our conversations have been about recognition and engagement, and that recognition and engagement and consistency being accessible and understanding that, hey, there's a neighborhood here before us.
Being true to your word with them.
Yeah, that at the end of the day has allowed us to do things like what we did here at 5050 Baltimore, which is we doubled the density of this lot, right? This building needed 7 zoning variances.
Wow.
Right? And usually you get fought for 1, and we got approval for 7. And so, like, in that scenario, that doesn't happen unless you are appropriately recognizing the community, engaging in conversations that in some cases you're not going to like as an investor and developer, and then working through that.
Was there a common concern?
I think the number one concern was affordability. I think that was prevalent. And, we're talking 2017, so this is before all of the civil unrest and all of the conversations that we're having about equality that are so prevalent right now. What's interesting is in this community, they were always prevalent, right? About access to affordable housing or access to more affordable options. They were concerned about the commercial spaces being real, right? Developers have a tendency to just meet the minimum. And so the commercial spaces aren't really accessible. And so that was a conversation that came up.
What do you mean by accessible?
Are they large enough to hold real businesses? When you build, there's a space on Baltimore Avenue, for example, it's the minimal square footage to meet the code. So it's an 800 square foot commercial space. Build a handicap accessible bathroom for 60 square feet. How much engagement can you really create on a major corridor if your commercial space is only 720 square feet?
Yeah.
Not a lot.
So tell me about this project.
So we are sitting in 5050 Baltimore Avenue. This is deemed Philly's first inclusionary housing building. The idea behind this project was to meet the community in the middle about their concerns. And one of those concerns was affordability. And so we looked at this project and said, okay, we have challenges in this project that are going to result in a multitude of zoning variances. We're going to have to come to the community and ask them what they want. So let's have a conversation, right? What are your concerns, right? Affordability was number 1. Real commercial space size and use was number 2. Aesthetics was number 3. Parking became part of the conversation. What we wanted to do was provide as much affordable options as possible in this building. And so we showed the community our performance and said, we want to meet this kind of requirement in investor return. This is the debt service coverage ratio our bank needs to meet in order to be able to afford our mortgage. This is how much profitability we want. These are our fees. This is our numbers.
Transparent.
And we can turn around and give all of this self-subsidy in this project to 1 unit. And it could be at 20% AMI. Or we could spread the love and have a diverse scale of rents. The community chose a diverse scale. And so we turned around and made a deal with them that 3 out of the 12 units here would be at more accessible rates for the life of our mortgage. So our mortgage was a 2-year construction period with an 8-year term on the back end. So 10-year period, basically, of affordability, 8 of which folks would be living here. And Baltimore Avenue is going to open, if everything goes well, in the middle of August. And we'll start taking applications from local congregations and RCOs, trying to ensure that the affordable units stay with folks that are directly from this community. So we're not going to publicly advertise the affordable units.
So what are some challenges you faced?
We joke around in my office that this is my doctorate in real estate development and construction. COVID was a vacation for us with this project. That's how bad the other issues have been.
Rather be in a pandemic?
Yeah, pandemic was actually a vacation. So if we run down the issues, we had a neighbor who had illegally taken 324 square feet of our parcel. There is a little triangle. If you see the design of this building, there are 2 triangles on the west side of the property that are designed into the building. We don't own one of those triangles. It's stuck in a deed from June of 1898.
Oh, fascinating.
When the building was sold in September of 1898, part of the buildings and the lots description was left off the secondary deed. So this is one parcel. They separated it into individual parcels in June of 1898, and then they sold them in September to individual developers to build buildings, and we lost the tail. 5048 Baltimore Avenue.
Okay.
So we designed the building and we built around it. But that created a new problem, which was a zoning variance to build to the lot line of that triangle.
Yeah.
That triangle also created another problem in which the city saw that triangle as the corner. So it harmed our zoning and how much we could build on this parcel. We started construction, and even though the first phase environmental came back clean, there was a 1,000-gallon oil tank underground that we found as we were excavating that somebody just dropped in a hole. It was full.
Wow.
And it was leaking. So that delayed our project with environmental permits and things like that and the cleanup of the soil. We had a water leak in the middle of Baltimore Avenue about midway down the block. We're at the lowest point. Our foundation walls were up, but our slab wasn't in. So next thing we knew, we had built the neighborhood a pool.
Oh, yeah.
Except SEPTA would not shut down their trolleys, so we had to wait 3 weeks to turn the water off.
Really?
So that was fun. Each one of these things has been a massive headache unto itself. And then the building in and of itself is complicated. It's a big triangle. There's no right angles. Mm-hmm. And so if you see the framing in this building, everything is a triangle interconnected with each other, which made it much more expensive to build, much more complicated. And so when we went to go do our next project, we built a rectangle. Nice right angles. Yeah, so this project is 8 years in the making, or 9 years in the making. I bought the first parcel 2012, December 2012. I bought the second parcel 2 years later. I went to the owner's home in a snowstorm and knocked on their door because you're going to be home in a snowstorm.
Yes.
But they had a title issue that needed time to resolve, so it took us 1.5 to 2 years to buy the second parcel. And then the third parcel, we got incredibly creative with. It was owned by a defunct nonprofit that hadn't been functioning for 30 years. And so we filed conservatorship and then brought the Attorney General's office in as the overseer of nonprofit organizations and worked with the court system, Orphans Court, and the Attorney General's office to transfer ownership to us to build this building.
Yeah.
And so it was very complicated.
There's nothing easy about that, was it?
There was nothing easy about this building. And so, but we're here.
So
we're 60 days away from being done.
You almost done your thesis?
Almost done my thesis. Yeah.
So I think back to your mom and how she instilled that entrepreneurship in you. Yeah. And how it's just, you just don't give up. You know?
No. Listen, my mom owned maybe she was 23 or 24. So I would have been 2 or 3 years old. She started a washer and dryer business where she bought old washing machines that came out of people's homes. She would recondition them and she'd resell them for $89 with a warranty. The business took off. She had 5 shops, but one of the stories that always sat very, very well with me as a kid is the first time that her employees didn't show up for work and she had a delivery to make. And she had no idea how to install a part to get this washer operational. And, the story goes something to the effect of, my mom's on the floor crying on the phone with her mom and my grandmother. And it's at that moment you make the decision, do you quit or do you go forward, right? That business put me through school, right? Awesome. And so, obviously she didn't stay on the floor, right? And so when a building, does what it did here, we don't stay on the floor either.
Yeah.
So.
That's a great lesson.
Yeah. So my mom's my business partner now, and so we're both kind of resilient and move forward. And company has 11 employees now, and onward.
So with your mom's gift to you with that, I see that you're now giving to others, giving back to the community. Can you tell me a little bit about your mentoring,
Sure.
what you're doing?
My mom was in real estate, but it was run by like a mom and pop shop, right? They, my mom and dad did the repairs. They did the leasing, whatever it wasn't anything specific. Setting up the business and putting buildings in the ground, I didn't have necessarily a mentor. And 6 years ago, I got a phone call out of the blue that somebody who was in one of the first Jumpstart Germantown programs had recommended that I come and be a speaker. Ken and I spoke on the phone for a few moments. I told him kind of my story, which is not what it is now today. And he said, come do this thing. And so I came and I spoke at this event. I met all of these young folks who didn't look like me, who were trying to get into real estate. I saw Ken's vision for creating a business model that also helped folks that gave them access to capital that in most situations those folks who are minorities and women would not have access to. And I just thought, wow, that's just cool. That's awesome. And so when he asked me to be a mentor, it kind of just sent me down a road that I had no clue existed. What is happening now is, I have shadows. I have somebody shadowing me today. I had a shadow 2 days ago. You want to come learn the business, you want to hear what it sounds like and what it feels like, come hang out for the day. And then, the other day I received a pro forma from somebody who was looking at a project and they just wanted a quick review and see if I could find any flaws in what they were looking at, and wrote them back my quick comments and then asked them if we could bring it up at the next mentee call. And now we have some folks I have one gentleman who just got pre-approved. He's going to be buying, he's currently renting, but he's going to be buying his first investment property, but he's living in one of the units, which is a great way to start his career, which is awesome. It's incredibly rewarding.
Definitely. Something one of the things I get passionate about too.
It's awesome.
And bringing the power of real estate to just the everyday person, that accessibility that you were talking about. And it's life changer.
One of the challenging conversations that we have at community meetings is obviously about gentrification, right? It's such a dirty word. The reality that we say, and what I say in those meetings, is that there's a very, very big difference between gentrification and a gentrifier. Gentrifiers come into a community, they don't care about its history. I'm here now, recognize me, it doesn't matter what has happened for the past 3 generations. That is very dangerous and very problematic. But the idea of gentrification and the improvement of distressed properties or vacant lots and things like that isn't necessarily a bad thing, dependent on who owns it. Programs like Jumpstart, mentoring folks who don't have access to that information, who've never gotten into the business before, if those folks own in their own communities, they have a better chance of having a say in what happens in their neighborhood and simultaneously build wealth from their own community. Whatever I do mentoring, the other mentors that are in the Jumpstart program, they all give access to folks and communities that otherwise would never have it. And that part of that's awesome.
Tell us about Project Rehab.
Project Rehab is my baby. It's a program run through the University City District, which is a special service district out in West Philadelphia. The special service district was created initially for the idea of cleanliness and safety in the University City District area, which is 30th Street to 50th Street and Woodland Avenue to Spring Garden. That was its original mission. Well, from there, you can turn around and you can create a whole litany of tree branches, right? Vacant properties falls under both cleanliness and safety, right? It's the broken window theory. You have one broken window and no one fixes it. It's not that difficult to conceive that another window is going to break at some point. After I had closed my janitorial company in 2010, I owned one property. I was cleaning at night to keep, the lights on in my house. And I started applying for jobs and I wanted to stay local. When I had the janitorial company, I was traveling to 3 different states, 7 days a week. It was nuts. I wanted to be close. I had just moved to this neighborhood in King Sessing. I wanted to be close. University City District had a position open to manage their clean and safe program. And I thought, well, that fits really, really well. So I applied. I got to the very, very end, and the last interview was about creating a platform to solve some of the problems they were having. So they had issues with the clean and safe. I made comments about those, and then they had one kind of curveball, which was vacant properties. I made a presentation to the interview committee. If they hired me, I would go out and hire a real estate developer as a consultant. The idea being that the consultant would guide vacant property owners through the rehabilitation process. I didn't get the job, but I got a lunch a couple of weeks later. And the lunch was, we love this project concept that you have. We have no idea what it looks like. Can we hire you as a consultant? Can you build us a business plan around it? Sure. I'm cleaning at night. You want to pay me to put my thoughts on paper? Sure, whatever. And instead of a business plan came a playbook, an if-then scenario, right? If the property has this problem, and I was flying by the seat of my pants. I mean, I didn't a tenth of what I know now. They bought it. They hired me as a consultant and said, you've got 6 months, see what it looks like. So I think I was paid $350 every 2 weeks. And I ended up getting L&I to take a look at a property at Springfield and 49th Street that had collapsed in the back after a storm. And I had applied pressure to the owner through L&I. L&I was going to knock the building down. Mm-hmm. I had found the owner in Washington, D.C. I had sent a certified letter and got the signature card back, right? Name matched. Great, I know where you are, but I can't get you to respond to me, right? Mm-hmm. I don't own your property. I don't have any real teeth. Mm-hmm. But I got L&I to take a look at it. L&I deemed the property to be unsafe, so much so that they were going to knock the building down. Well, that picture that I sent him via text message of the gate going up got his attention. And then I helped him file an injunction against L&I to stop them from demolishing the building.
Okay.
We then negotiated with L&I a 2-week reprieve where he needed a structural engineer's report. Well, I didn't know any structural engineers at the time, so I was like in the phone book calling structural engineers.
Yeah,
we got a structural engineer who wrote a report about how the property could be saved. That bought us another 2 weeks to get estimates on remediation that the structural engineer had recommended. Mm-hmm. And the minute that this person saw the pricing, he said, "Nope, I'm not doing that. I'm out." Mm-hmm. I said, "Great, let me introduce you to a couple of realtors," right? Friends of mine in the neighborhood who I didn't actually know at the time. So I'm calling folks. "Who do you know in the neighborhood?" Introduced him to a realtor, and within a week we had it sold. And today that property is still standing. It is a triplex. It is owned by a neighbor who bought it with her 401k. So it's a retirement plan building for her. Instead of, and this intact block of Victorian Rose, instead of having a hole, has a building. And the minute that happened, the rest of the project took off. The project is about to celebrate, or has celebrated, 10 years now. Wow. It's been funded by the Department of Community and Economic Development through the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I still run it. Yesterday I dealt with a church that has a bell tower that's collapsing. It's an amazing program. It has helped to rehabilitate more than $26 million worth of real estate in this community. Mm-hmm. UCD owns none of it. I own none of it. We've never been paid for it. Mm-hmm. It's a free program to anybody who owns distressed property in the district.
Amazing. And Philly's is plagued with distressed properties and absentee owners that have just disappeared.
Yep.
That's
we hunt them down.
And that's really easy.
We've found them in Alaska. We have found them hiding behind corporate veils in Nevada. I will hunt them down. I will.
So your paralegal side comes in, right?
As I had said, my vast resume has allowed me to utilize that skill set.
Yeah. So what does the next 5 to 10 years look like for each of these companies?
Sure. So for Project Rehab, the goal has always been put myself out of a job, right? I mean, I'm salaried now as a part-time employee, but my goal has always been to put myself out of a job, right? There should not be any distressed properties in neighborhoods, especially those in and around economic employment hubs like the University City District. And so that's my job there, right? And that's always been the goal. In terms of my other companies, we're starting to see that we're hitting capacity on the construction side, right, in terms of our team. And I can see that as Spak Group grows more, we're going to have to start to sub out some of that GC work, or we're going to have to continue to expand our team. But we're now looking in other regions of Pennsylvania. And so if we go to other cities, we're going to need to sub that out. And so Kaps Construction will start acting like an owner's rep for Spak Group instead of the GC. And the idea behind Spak Group is to continue to grow without compromising our mission. Can we build more equitably? Can we build in a community-focused manner and still make a profit, regardless of commodity prices rising or land values increasing, interest rates rising, the city of Philadelphia passing legislation that makes absolutely no sense to anybody? Mm-hmm. Can we continue to do that without compromising our mission? I think that is where we will find our challenge, but we'll also find our growth. I can see that being the next 5 years. And Spak Management's just going to have to keep up. Just going to have to keep up. More leasing agents, more marketing dollars, just going to have to keep up.
Yeah. So Concrete Cowboys. Tell us a bit about the movie.
So the movie is an amazing script. It's based on a book written by Greg Neary. The idea behind this script was to tell a multitude of stories Most of the promotion around the movie was about a father-son story and their reconnection. But underlying that father-son story was a story about gentrification. And what I found most important was a story about the Black cowboy culture that is currently in Philadelphia and the history that it's come from. And the movie came about through real estate, through helping somebody. I had helped a nonprofit guide them through the sale of one of their properties in this neighborhood. They had asked for my opinion and I gave it to them. Great, so I meet this guy, Ricky Staub. Ricky says, I own this property in Brewerytown. This is the problem. It's got a clouded title, something with the redevelopment authority. I have no idea how to fix it. Yeah, not a problem. Great, I can do it. And was outside of the district, right? So I could help him as a consultant. Hey, great, thanks for helping me. A couple emails back and forth, a couple conversations by phone. I never asked him what he did for a living. I never asked him why he was in California or why he owned a property in Brewerytown. I never asked. I don't know why, it just never came up. And like 2 years later, which was 3 years ago, he sent me this random email with a book of photos of young men riding horses. It was like a storybook. He told a story through pictures, and it was a bunch of addresses. Like, hey, nice to hear from you. What am I looking at? He goes, I'm going to shoot a movie in Philly. I said, really? Like, okay, like an independent, like kind of, he was like, no, I think it's going to be a big deal. We don't really have any money yet. We don't really have the actors associated. But if we do it, we have to shoot it on location. This place called Fletcher Street. Like, I don't even know which Fletcher Street is, man. What are you talking about? And he starts telling me that Fletcher Street's been around for 100 years. Majority of the Cowboys that have horses stabled there do not own the real estate. They're basically squatting. And across the street used to be this vacant warehouse that the city eventually tore down. The city owns the land and they want to redevelop it as affordable housing. If I can't shoot before they start developing, I'm not making this movie. And I said, why? Can't you just recreate the stables? He said, you have to go there. It's a special place. And I said, okay, what do you need from me? He said, I need connections to the city. I need to stop them from developing just enough for me to shoot the movie and get out of their way. And this is that whole idea of, do you stay on the floor or do you jump right in? And I was like, I have no idea. Sure, yeah, I'm in. Let's do this.
Start with yes.
Let's go. Start with yes and see where it goes. It's like, it's like improv. Right? You never say no. It's yes and. So yeah, what do you need? And it started out with my role being, hey, can I get in between all of these city agencies? Can I get them to the table to agree to allow us to shoot? It turned into way more than that, more than I ever expected. And so I got to meet the riders. I got to hang out at Fletcher Street. I got to put city officials at a table and tell them, you need to recognize that this is a history in Philadelphia that you all have ignored. This is an opportunity to tell the story well. Help us and negotiate the construction moving back. And then it became, kind of fun. Hey, Ryan, we can't find the house for Idris Elba's character. We're just having trouble finding a location. What do you think you can do? Well, what do you need? We need a house, this many bedrooms. It needs to look kind of shabby. And we need it to be within a certain certain linear footage of the main shooting site because we don't have enough money to move all of our stuff.
All right.
Great. Let's throw a radius circle around the main shooting site. Let's go on the MLS. Let's find every property that's for sale that's vacant. Let's call those realtors and let's set up a tour. And we did. It was like 3 vans, producers, film folks. We walked in the first house and they were like, this is it.
Wow.
And they were standing in the living room and I was standing at the top of the steps and I was just, hands folded, just listening to a very unique conversation in a world that I never thought I'd be in, right? About where they were putting the lighting and how they were going to get the staff in here. And then the director of photography goes, yeah, we're going to put the horse right here. And I was like, guys, I'm sorry. What? No. You can't put a 3,000-pound horse in this house. Why not? Well, it's a 90-year-old row house and it's vacant and the joists are not going to be able to hold a horse. And at the time, Idris had just been named Sexiest Man Alive. And I was like, you can't put the Sexiest Man Alive, a 3,000-pound horse, your staff, the director, and all your equipment in his house. You're going to end up in the basement.
Yep.
And Ricky, being of similar mindset to me, right, yes and, was like, well, if we did it, how would we do it? And I was like, I don't know. Somebody got a flashlight? And I went down the basement and there was a section of the slab in the basement that was cracked, and I picked it up and removed it, and I was feeling the soil, and there was no moisture there. I'm looking at the joists, and I'm looking for misconnections on the joist systems, and I'm like, well, if we did it, we'd have to cut the slab, pour a rebar footer, we'd have to buy stabilizers or rent them, and build a wood structure in between the joists. So if the horse steps between the joist system that's on something, really? How much is it gonna cost? I don't know. When do you need to buy it? We need it in 2 weeks. Okay, and it worked. If you've seen the movie, it worked. But each one of those things became, a different experience with the movie. They said, hey, we need someone to act as a developer on site, right? So my wife is an actress. Great. Yeah, I got somebody for you. And then it became about what do we do after the fact, right? So we make this beautiful movie, we tell this beautiful story, and it ends the way that every horse stable in Philadelphia has ended. The stable doesn't own its real estate, and the Cowboys can't control their future, and they get displaced. And so we created a nonprofit called the Philadelphia Urban Riding Academy, or PURA for short. And the idea behind PURA is to find a home to raise money, use the movie and our vast resumes and experiences to find and build a home for horses. And so we're in conversations now with Curtis Jones, council member in West Philly, hopefully to do some things in the West Philly area for PURA and to build stables in a neighborhood that hasn't had them in a really long time. And so there is a future beyond just shooting the movie, which is great. It's great. It's an amazing experience.
For anybody listening to this, is there a way that they can contribute?
Yeah. You can actually go to Philadelphia Urban Riding Academy's website. I think it's pura.org. You'll see the link. You can donate right to our GoFundMe. And so, we appreciate that. That'd be awesome. Yeah.